Welcome everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today we spend a full hour or more inside just 6 lines of Gurbani. 6 lines. That is the entire First Pauri of Sri Japji Sahib. And yet these 6 lines contain what one scholar of the Guru Granth Sahib described as the substance of the whole of Japji Sahib, nay, of the whole Guru Granth Sahib. In these 6 lines, Guru Nanak asks the most important question a human being can ever ask. And then he answers it. Those of you who have been with me through this podcast series will already have traveled a long road together. We have explored the life of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the child who refused the sacred thread, the man who disappeared into the pain river for 3 days and emerged transformed, the saint who walked 28,000 kilometers across the known world to carry one message. There is one God, and that God is yours, every single one of you. We have explored the Mool Mantra, those 9 extraordinary phrases that Guru Nanak spoke as his first words after his enlightenment, painting a complete portrait of the divine. 1. Truth, Creator, fearless, without hatred, timeless, unborn, self-existent, known only by grace. And we have explored the surrender, Hukam, the divine order, that governs everything from the formation of galaxies to the flight of a single thought through the mind. Today we return to where we should have been all along, to the very first step, the first Pauri. And I want to set something up for you before we begin. Because the first Pauri has a particular genius that is easy to miss if you approach it too quickly. Most spiritual texts begin by telling you what to do. Meditate, pray, fast, serve. Follow these commandments. Perform these rituals. The first Pauri does something completely different. It begins by telling you what does not work. Four lines, 4 paths, 4 sincere, deeply held spiritual strategies, all present in 15th century India, all still present in the world today. And Guru Nanak says, gently but firmly, of each one, no, this path alone will not take you there. And then, only after clearing the ground, Guru Nanak asks the sharpest question in all of Gurbani and gives the answer that the entire Guru Granth Sahib is built upon. This is the first Pauri, and we are going to go very slowly, very deeply into every word. Before we read the Pauri, let's understand where it stands. Sri Japji Sahib begins with the Mool Mantra, 9 attributes of God. Then comes the opening shlok, Aad Sach, Jugad Sach, है भी सच, नानक होसी भी सच. meaning true in the beginning, true throughout the ages, true here and now, and forever true. The shlok is the foundation. The Mool Mantra is the map of who God is. And then the 38 Pauris begin. And the Pauris are Guru Nanak's answer to the question that every human being who has ever felt the pull of something greater has asked. How do I reach this God? How do I align myself with this truth? How do I become genuine? How do I become real? The 38 Pauris are 38 steps, like steps ascending to a shrine. The tradition calls them, each one building on the last. They are not random teachings. They form one coherent journey. And the first Pauri is the first step. And what is the first step? It's not a technique. It is a clearing. Before Guru Nanak tells you what to do, he tells you what is not sufficient on its own. He clears away 4 popular spiritual roads, not to dismiss them, but to deepen them, to show their limits, and to point beyond them to the one thing that works. The first Pauri also introduces the central theme of the entire Japji Sahib, and arguably the central theme of the entire Guru Granth Sahib. That theme is the question, Kiv Sachiaaraa Hoeeai, meaning, how does one become Sachiaar? Sachiaar. This is a beautiful Punjabi word that does not translate neatly. It comes from Sach, truth. Sachiaar means one who is truthful in the deepest sense. Not just someone who speaks truth, but someone whose entire being is aligned with truth. Someone who is genuine, authentic, real. Someone in whom there is no gap between the outer life and the inner reality. Someone who is not performing goodness but actually living it. How does one become Sachiaar? This is the question. Everything else follows from it. Let us now read the Pauri. We'll read slowly and clearly, one line at a time. Pause after each. सोचे सोची न होवे जे सोची लखवार चुप्पे चुप न होवे जे लाई रहा लिवतार भुखिया भुख न उतरी जे भन्ना पुरिया भार सहसी सियाण पलक होई ते इक ना चले नाली किव सचियारा होइए किव खुड़े तुटे पाली हुक्मी रजाई चलना Nanak लिखिया नाली. Meaning, by thinking and thinking, one cannot reach God, even by thinking hundreds of thousands of times. By remaining silent, inner silence is not obtained, even by remaining lovingly absorbed in deep meditation. The hunger of the hungry is not appeased, even by piling up loads of worldly goods. Hundreds of thousands of clever tricks, not even one of them will go with you in the end. So how can one become truthful? And how can the wall of falsehood be broken? Says Nanak, by walking in the will of the One, as it is written into every soul. 6 lines, and inside them a complete diagnosis of the human spiritual condition and the one cure. Now let us enter word by word, line by line. Before we begin unpacking each line, I want to address something that many listeners and scholars have encountered, because it reveals something beautiful about Gurbani and about Guru Nanak's genius. The very first word of the first Pauri, Soche, has been interpreted in 2 distinct ways by great Sikh scholars, and both interpretations are illuminating. First interpretation, Soch as thinking, contemplation, or mental analysis. Under this reading, supported by scholars like Dr. Sant Singh Khalsa, Yogi Bhajan and others, Guru Nanak is saying, by intellectual analysis, by the constant churn of mental thought, you cannot reach God. The mind's activity is not the path to the infinite. No matter how many times you think about God, you cannot think your way to God. Second interpretation, Soch as physical purification, ritual cleansing. Under this reading, supported by Professor Sahib Singh, scholars studying the word's usage across the Guru Granth Sahib and the historical context of 15th century India, Soch means bodily purification, ritual bathing, the practice common in that era of bathing in sacred rivers at pilgrimage sites, the Ganga, the Yamuna, to clean oneself of sin and merit union with God. Here is the beautiful thing. Both interpretations are spiritually true, and Guru Nanak, who was himself both a deeply contemplative thinker and someone who challenged ritualistic religion throughout his life, likely intended both dimensions simultaneously. Through his Odysseus, those 28,000 kilometers of travel, Guru Nanak visited the Haridwar, Varanasi, Prayag, Rameshwaram. He watched people bathing in rivers, believing the water would wash away their inner impurity. And he gently asked, "Can water clean what is within the mind? Can the Ganga, however sacred or pure, remove the stain of ego?" He also encountered yogis and mystics who believed that constant mental contemplation and philosophical analysis would lead them to God. And he said, thinking about the infinite is not the same as touching it. So Soch addresses both the priest performing ritual ablutions and the philosopher spinning ideas. Neither the ritual, faith, nor the philosophical inquiry alone is sufficient. And with this dual meaning in mind, the entire First Pauri opens up much more richly. Let's now go line by line. Line 1. Soche soch na hove. Soche soch na hove, je soche lakhwar. By thinking or purifying, one does not arrive, even if one thinks or purifies 100 or thousands of times. Let us take each word. Soche, This is the instrument, the method being used by means of soch, through the act of soch, whether that is mental contemplation or ritual purification. Soch, what is being sought? The inner soch, the purity within, the arrival, the genuine connection with truth. Na hoeeai, does not happen, does not come about, the gap remains. Je soche lakhwar, meaning even if one does this 100,000 times, lakh means 100,000, but in Punjabi poetry it means countless, infinite repetition. Even unlimited repetition of this method does not close the gap. Think about what Guru Nanak is doing. He is not saying do not think. He is not saying do not bathe. He is not dismissing intellectual inquiry or physical cleanliness. He is saying these methods as the primary path to God, as a thing that will make you Sachiaaraa are insufficient alone. Why? Because the domain where the separation exists is different from the domain where the method operates. Let me offer an analogy. Imagine your heart is heavy, you're grieving something deeply, and someone says to you, just take a shower, you'll feel better. Now, a shower may refresh you. The warmth of the water may soothe you temporarily, but the grief is not in your body. The grief is somewhere the water cannot reach. So no matter how many times you shower, 1,000 showers, 100,000 showers, the grief remains untouched. This is what Guru Nanak is saying about the inner impurity of the soul. The separation from God, the wall of ego, is not in the body. It is not in the thought stream. It is somewhere deeper than both. And you cannot close a gap in one dimension by applying a solution in a different dimension. Sukhmani Sahib, that other great composition of the Guru Granth Sahib, makes this even more explicit. Soch karai dinas aru raat, man ki mail na tanate jaat. Means one may purify the body day and night, but the dirt of the mind does not go from cleaning the body. The body can be cleansed, the mind can think deeply, but the root of separation from God, the Hoeeai, the ego wall, is untouched by these methods alone. And here is the even deeper teaching in this line. Notice the word soch appears twice. Soche, soch. Purification by purification, or thinking by thinking. There is a suggestion of fertility here. A grinding circular quality. The person who thinks their way to God ends up just thinking about their thinking. The person who purifies themselves physically ends up just purifying themselves again and again, never quite feeling clean enough inside. This is a pattern we all know from our own lives. We reach for the familiar tool, more analysis, more research, more intellectual understanding. But at some point we discover that understanding about God and actually experiencing God are two very different things. The mind can talk about the ocean, but talking about the ocean is not swimming. Line 2. Chuppe chup na howe, je laya rai livtar. Meaning, by remaining silent, inner silence is not obtained, even by remaining lovingly absorbed deep within. If the first line speaks to the path of the intellectuals and the ritualists, this second line speaks directly to the meditators and the silent sages. Chuppe, by remaining silent, by the practice of physical silence, by withdrawing from speech and activity, by sitting in stillness. Chup, the inner silence, the deep stillness of the mind and soul, the quiet that is not the absence of sound but the presence of peace. Na howe, does not come. Je laya raha livtar, meaning, even if one remains lovingly absorbed with a continuous thread of attention. This is the most beautiful phrase in this line. Live means loving attention, deep absorption. Tar means a thread, continuous, unbroken. So this speaks of the most devoted, loving, continuous meditation, hours of it, perhaps a lifetime of it. And Guru Nanak says, even this taken alone is not enough, is not sufficient. This is a bold statement, isn't it? In 15th century India and still today, the path of silence, of withdrawal from the world, of solitary meditation was considered by many to be the highest spiritual path. The image of the solitary sage sitting in deep samadhi in a cave or forest was and is associated with the pinnacle of spiritual attainment, right? And Guru Nanak, who himself knew the depth of inner silence from his experience at the Bain river, says, Chuppe chup na howe. By silence, silence is not obtained. What does this mean? It means the outer silence and inner silence are not the same thing. You can sit completely still and physically say nothing, and inside, your mind is absolutely roaring. Judgments, desires, memories, fantasies, plans, fears. The mind chatterbox does not stop because the body is still. We have all experienced this in our quietest moments, lying awake at night or sitting in a waiting room. The mind refuses to be silenced by the simple act of physical stillness. The great Yogi Bhajan described this powerfully. Your brain releases 1,000 thoughts per wink of the eye. This is called intellect. Intellect releases thought, whether you like it or not. So long as you are alive, you will breathe and intellect will release thoughts. The mind is not a light switch. You cannot simply choose to turn it off. And the ego, the deep sense of separate selfhood, does not dissolve just because you sit in a dark room for an hour. Moreover, there is an even subtler teaching here. Chuppe also refers to what we might call spiritual withdrawal, removing yourself from society, from relationships, from responsibilities, in the belief that isolation itself is the path to God. Guru Nanak directly challenged this throughout his life. He was never a forest hermit. He ran a storehouse in Sultanpur. He farmed in Kartarpur. He walked through the markets and villages and royal courts of the world. His entire life was a demonstration that God is not found by leaving life behind. God is found within life. And notice the extraordinary phrase, live tar, the continuous loving thread. Guru Nanak is not speaking here of careless, distracted silence. He is speaking of the most devoted, sincere, loving, continuous meditation imaginable, and saying even that as an outer technique performed by the ego self who is trying to reach God does not by itself dissolve the separation. This is because the problem is not lack of effort. The problem is the nature of the one making the effort. When the ego self sits in meditation trying to reach God, the ego itself is still present in the act of seeking. The seeker and the sought are still two separate things, and it is that sense of two-ness or duality, I here, God there, that is the very separation we are trying to dissolve. Think of trying to see your own eye. You cannot look directly at the instrument with which you are looking. In the same way, the ego cannot use ego effort to dissolve the ego. Something else is needed. Something that comes from beyond the ego's own reach. And that something, as we will discover at the end of this Pauri, has a name. Bukhiya bukh na utre, je banna puriya par. This is line 3. And it means the hunger of the hungry is not appeased, even by piling up loads of worldly goods. We have moved now from the domain of the mind to the domain of desire. And Guru Nanak uses a metaphor of such everyday power that it stops us completely. Bukhiya, the hungry ones. Those who are hungry. The world is plural. This is a universal human condition. Bhukh means hunger, the deep, knowing sense of incompleteness, the wanting, the seeking for more. Na utri, meaning is not satisfied, is not quenched, does not go away. Je banna puriya bhar. Even if one ties together the weight of entire worlds full of goods. Banna means to tie together, to bundle. Puriya means worlds, realms. Not just one world, but worlds. Bhar means weight, load, burden. So the image is of someone gathering wealth equal to the combined weight of all the worlds in existence, and still the hunger remains. Dear listeners, this is one of the most striking images in all of Gurbani. Not just wealth you can carry, not just a successful life, not even the wealth of one world. Worlds, plural, and still the hunger is not quenched. Who are the Bukhiya, the hungry ones, that Guru Nanak is speaking of? There are two ways to understand this, and both are important. The first reading. Those who are hungry for material things like wealth, possessions, status, power, pleasure. There is a deep hunger in the human psyche that reaches far more and more material acquisition, in the belief that the next thing, the next car, the next promotion, the next relationship, the next experience will finally satisfy the longing, but it never does. The Sukhmani Sahib says it directly. Bina santokh nahi kora jaye. Without contentment, no one is ever truly satisfied. We live in a world that has turned this very hunger into an entire economic system. Advertising's entire purpose is to create desire, to make you feel incomplete without a product. And Guru Nanak in the 15th century understood that this hunger is not satisfied by feeding it. It is infinite. The more you feed it, the more it grows. But the second reading is even deeper. Book also speaks to the spiritual hunger, the deepest human longing of all, the soul's hunger for connection with its source, the aching sense that something is missing, that life should mean more, that there is something just beyond the next achievement, the next relationship, the next experience. This spiritual hunger drives people to pilgrimage, to philosophy, to meditation, to accumulation. People try to satisfy it with rituals, with silence, with knowledge, with wealth, and none of it, not 100,000 rituals bathed, nor a lifetime of silent meditation, not all the wealth of all the worlds, none of it satisfies the hunger at its root. Because the hunger is not the problem. The hunger is actually the most honest thing about us. The hunger for God, for truth, for reunion with the Source. This is the soul recognizing what it actually is. The problem is not the hunger. The problem is that we are trying to satisfy a spiritual hunger with material solutions, like trying to quench physical thirst by drinking sand. Guru Nanak is not saying, suppress your hunger. He is saying, recognize what the hunger is actually for. The hunger you feel for more, for meaning, for something beyond this. It is the soul's cry for its source. And the source cannot be found by piling up goods, however magnificent those goods might be. There is also a beautiful historical resonance here. In 15th century India, certain spiritual schools practiced extreme austerity, fasting, bodily denial, deliberately starving the physical self in the belief that this would purify the soul. Guru Nanak is addressing this too. Even ritual fasting, piling up abstinence rather than goods, does not quench the hunger of the soul. The problem is not at the level of the body or its appetites. The problem is somewhere deeper. Line 4. Sahas siyan palak hoi, ta ikna challe naal. Meaning, hundreds of thousands of clever tricks, not even one of them will go with you in the end. We have arrived at the fourth path, and in many ways the most contemporary, the most modern of the four, the path of cleverness, of strategy, of human intelligence applied to the problem of reaching God. Sahas means thousands, lakh means 100,000s, together an overwhelming number, right? Syanpa. This is the key word. It comes from the root meaning clever, cunning, wise. In context, it refers to worldly cleverness, the strategies, the schemes, the diplomatic maneuvers, the clever ploys. Some scholars extend this to include all forms of human intellectual accomplishment, learning, debate, scriptural mastery, and philosophical argument. Ta ikna chaliya naal. Then not even one goes along with you. Chaliya naal literally means walks with you, accompanies you. Not even one clever trick, not one piece of worldly wisdom accompanies you at the moment of death. The word Chaliya naal is heartbreaking in its beauty. It brings up the image of accompaniment, of something or someone walking beside you at the great crossings of life, at the moment of death. What walks beside you? Not your degrees, not your wealth, not your reputation, not your cleverness, not even your philosophy. None of the intellectual or material achievements of this life walk through that door with you. What does accompany you? The quality of your inner life, the depth of your connection to truth, whether you have lived in Hukam, whether you have been genuinely aligned with the One, or whether you have merely been clever about appearing to be. This line is also a direct address to the scholars, the pundits, the mullahs, the priests, all those who believed that their mastery of scripture, their ritual expertise, their intellectual accomplishment in religious matters gave them special proximity to God. Guru Nanak himself encountered such figures throughout his travels. In Varanasi, the city of learning, he challenged the Brahmin priests. At the Muslim holy sites, he questioned the clergy. Not because learning is bad. The Guru Granth Sahib itself is one of the most intellectually sophisticated texts in the history of world religion. But because cleverness about God is not the same as closeness to God, knowledge about the divine is not the same as knowledge of the divine. There is a beautiful story from Guru Nanak's travels that illuminates this line. In Baghdad, he met Sheikh Balul, a Sufi saint. The two sat together and their conversation went far beyond the cleverness of theology. They spoke from the heart. They recognized something in each other that transcended their different religious vocabularies. This recognition soul to soul is what Chaliya naal. This is what walks with you. Not the clever arguments, but the genuine depth. And notice how these four lines build on each other. Ritual cleansing, meditation and silence, accumulation and desire, clever worldly wisdom, Guru Nanak has mapped 4 of the most common human strategies for reaching God. 4 paths pursued with great sincerity by millions of people in his time and still today. And he says of each alone, these are not sufficient to break the wall of falsehood, the mithya world, the samsara. He is not saying abandon these paths. He is saying they need something they do not contain within themselves. Something must animate them from within. Something must make the bath more than water, the silence more than absence of sound, the contentment more than resignation, the knowledge more than information. What is that something? We are about to find out. The $1 million question. Kiv Sachiaaraa Hoeeai. Kiv Sachiaaraa Hoeeai. Kiv Kurai to te pal. Meaning, so how can one become truly truthful? And how can the wall of falsehood be broken? We have arrived at what one scholar called the $1 million question of Japji Sahib. 2 questions in one couplet, asked back to back, each containing the full weight of the human spiritual predicament. Kiv mean how, the word of searching, of genuine inquiry, of a soul that has tried everything and is asking, not in despair, but with deep sincerity, what is the way? Sachiaaraa, meaning we must spend a moment with this word because it is the key of the entire Pauri and indeed of the entire Japji Sahib. Sachiaaraa comes from Sach, truth, with the suffix that makes it an adjective of being. Not someone who sometimes speaks truth, not someone who has studied truth, but someone who is truth, whose very being is aligned with truth, whose outer life and inner reality are no longer in contradiction with each other. Someone who is authentic, genuine, real, not performing goodness, but actually living it. The word Sachiaaraa appears 3 times in the Guru Granth Sahib in very close proximity. Here in the First Pauri and twice more in the early Pauris. And each time it is paired with the question, how? Not what is the truth, but how. How does one become this? Because here is the human problem. We all know, at some level, what is true and what is right. We know we should be generous, patient, loving, free from ego. We can read about it. We can talk about it. We can even teach it to others, and yet we find ourselves still reactive, still fearful, still grasping, still performing rather than being. The gap between knowing truth and being truth, between knowing that we should be without ego and actually living without ego, this gap is the wall that Guru Nanak now names. Kiv Kure Tutte Pal. Kure means falsehood, mithya. Ku is the root, something that is empty, hollow, not genuine, not real. Kur is falsehood in the sense of inauthenticity, the gap between how we appear and what we actually are. It is not only telling lies, it is the fundamental dishonesty of the ego self, which presents a performance to the world rather than revealing what is actually within. Tutte means broken, torn, shattered. Pal means a wall, a protective wall, a barrier. So the full phrase, how is the wall of falsehood broken? The pal, this wall is the barrier between the soul and God, between what we truly are and what we actually live, between kur and such, between the performance and the reality. Scholars offer a beautiful insight here. This wall is not made of stone. This wall is made of self-deception. It is the layer of inauthenticity that builds up around the soul. The persona we perform, the masks we wear, the distance between our words and our actions, between our professed values and our actual choices. And Guru Nanak asks, how does it break? He has just told us 4 things that do not break it. Ritual cleansing, no. Silent meditation alone, no. Accumulation and desire, no. Cleverness and worldly wisdom, absolutely not. The silence after this question is one of the most charged silences in all of sacred literature. The entire universe of human spiritual effort has just been assessed and found not worthless but insufficient. And now Guru Nanak breathes in and gives the answer. The answer? Hukam Rajaaee Chalnaa, Nanak Likhiya Naal. Says Nanak, by walking in the will of the One, as it is written into every soul. After 4 lines of what does not work, after the sharpest spiritual question ever asked, the answer arrives in 1 line, 11 words, and it is simultaneously the simplest and the most profound thing Guru Nanak ever said. Let us take every word, because every word is an entire universe. Hukam. We know this word from our deep exploration of the second Pauri. Hukam is the divine order, the will, the natural law by which all of existence operates. Not an arbitrary royal command, but the very intelligence that runs through everything. The force by which seeds know to become trees, by which hearts beat, by which galaxies spiral, by which consciousness arises. Hukam is the deepest nature of reality. Rajaaee. This word is extraordinary. It comes from raza in Arabic, means willingness, consent, pleasure, contentment. Rajaaee means something like with willing surrender, with joyful acceptance, with glad obedience. It is not forced compliance. It is not resigned acceptance of what you cannot change. It is something far deeper and more active, a genuine, loving, voluntary alignment with the will of the One. The Sikh Dharma International captures this beautifully. I am happy and pleased, God, in thy will, If you want me to be a great yogi, I am a great yogi. If you want me to be nobody, I am nobody. That is Rajaaee, not reluctant obedience, but joyful surrender. The difference between a soldier obeying orders under threat and a lover doing something because it is what they most deeply want. Chalna, to walk, to move forward, to conduct one's life. Chalna is not a passive word. It implies active, ongoing movement, not a one-time decision, but a continuous, moment-to-moment practice. Walking in the Hukam means living in such a way that every step, every word, every decision flows from alignment with the divine will rather than from the ego's agenda. So Hukam Rajaaee Chalnaa together, walking in willing, joyful alignment with the divine order. Nanak, Guru Nanak signs his name, as throughout the Guru Granth Sahib, the Guru places his own name in the verse, not as arrogance, but as personal testimony. I, Nanak, testify to this. I stake my name and my life on this truth. And now the most astonishing word in the entire Pauri. Likhiya naal, written along with, written with, written into. The Hukam, the divine will, is not something external to you. It is not a rule book in the sky that you must discover and follow. It is not a set of commandments delivered to someone else long ago. Likhiya naal means it is written with you. It came with you. It is inscribed within you. Every soul arrives in this world with the Hukam already written into its very being. The conscience, the deep moral knowing, the sense of what is right and genuine and true, this is the Hukam, already present, already inscribed in the soul. This is one of the most radical ideas in all of Sikh philosophy. You do not need to travel to a temple or a mosque or a sacred river to find God's will. God's will is already written inside you. The Hukam, the path to becoming Sachiaaraa, is not outside seeking. It is inside. It came with you. Dear listeners, let me sit with this for a moment because it changes everything. If the Hukam is written within every soul, then becoming Sachiaaraa, becoming genuinely truthful, aligned with truth, is not about adding something foreign to yourself. It is about removing what is blocking what is already there. The authentic self is not something you construct. It is something you uncover. The wall of kur, of falsehood, is not your natural state. Your natural state is such. The soul is already a spark of the divine. The soul is already made of the same substance as the one from which it came. What blocks it is the accumulated layers of ego, of performance, of inauthenticity, of the habits of self-deception that the mind has built up over a lifetime. And what dissolves those layers? Hukam Rajaaee Chalnaa, walking in conscious, willing alignment with the divine order that is already inscribed within. This is not about becoming something you are not. It is about becoming what you always were, underneath everything else. Think of a diamond in the earth. The diamond is already there. It does not need to be made. It needs to be freed from the surrounding rock. In the same way, the Sachiaaraa, the genuinely truthful being, is already within every soul. The Hukam is already written within every soul. The journey of Japji Sahib, all 38 Pauris, is a journey of uncovering that diamond, of living in such a way that more and more of the original light shines through. Now, let us understand what walking in Hukam actually looks like practically. Because this is not just a beautiful philosophy, it is a way of being. Living in Hukam means making choices in accordance with your deepest conscience, rather than your ego's preferences. It means responding to what is happening, rather than reacting from fear or desire. It means doing what each moment genuinely calls for, rather than what you think will make you look good or protect your self-image. It means accepting the conditions of your life, not passively, but with the understanding that those conditions themselves are Hukam, and responding to them authentically and critically. Likhya Naal means that this alignment is accessible to every single human being, without exception. Not just the learned, not just the wealthy, not just those born into the right caste or religion. Every soul, every single soul arrives in this world with the Hukam written within. Every single person has access to this alignment. This is why Guru Nanak sat in the same row as the lowest caste people to eat. This is why he traveled with a Muslim musician as his equal companion. This is why he spoke to shepherds and emperors with the same warmth and respect. Because he saw in every single human being the same Hukam inscribed within, the same capacity for becoming Sachiaaraa. And this is what dissolves the wall of Kur. Not 1,000 ritual baths, not a lifetime of forced silence, not all the wealth of all the worlds, not all the cleverness of all the scholars. What dissolves the wall of inauthenticity is the daily, moment-to-moment choice to live in alignment with what is already written within you, to let the deep truth of who you are become your actual life. That is Hukam Rajaaee Chalnaa. That is the answer to the $1 million question. And that is why this one line, the Sikh Research and Education Center tells us, is the substance of the whole Japji Sahib, rather the whole Guru Granth Sahib. The relationship between Pauri 1 and Pauri 2. Before we move to our synthesis, I want to speak briefly about something that always strikes me as one of the most beautiful examples of Guru Nanak's architectural genius in Japji Sahib. The first Pauri ends with its answer, Hukam Rajaaee Chalnaa, walk in the Hukam. And then the second Pauri immediately begins with the word Hukam, by the Hukam, as if the second Pauri is the first Pauri's very own question raised back to itself. You said, walk in the Hukam. But what is this hukam? What does it govern? How vast is it? And the second Pauri answers everything. Every form, every soul, every circumstance, every outcome. And then at its end, if you truly understand the hukam kahi na koe, the ego falls silent. So the first and second Pauris are a conversation. The first Pauri asks, how do we become Sachiaar? Answer, walk in the hukam. The second Pauri asks, what is a hukam? The answer, everything. And understanding it dissolves the ego. Together, they give us the complete frame. The problem is that the ego separates us from truth. The path is hukam. Understanding hukam dissolves the ego. When the ego dissolves, we become Sachiaar. And when we become Sachiaar, the wall of falsehood breaks and the soul finds its way home. This is the architecture of the Pauris. Each step leads to the next. Each answer generates the question that opens the next door. The historical context, Guru Nanak's own life. I want to take a moment to ground this first Pauri in the actual life and travels of Guru Nanak. Because he did not compose these words from a comfortable study. He wrote them from lived experience, from thousands of encounters with real human beings searching for God. Guru Nanak was born in 1469 in what is now Pakistan. From childhood, he questioned the spiritual methods of his time. He refused the sacred thread, the Janaeus, saying, "Give me instead a thread of compassion, contentment, and truth." He spent his father's business money on feeding hungry sadhus, saints, the Sacha Sauda, the true transaction. After his enlightenment at the Bain River, those 3 extraordinary days of immersion in the divine, he walked and walked and walked 28,000 kilometers to every major religious center of the Indian subcontinent, to Varanasi, the city of learning, to Rameshwaram at the southern tip of India, into the Himalayas, where the yogis sat in silent samadhi, to Sri Lanka, to Mecca and Medina, to Baghdad. At every place he observed, he listened, he engaged, he challenged, with love, with wit, with a poet's precision. At Haridwar, he saw millions of Hindus throwing water toward the rising sun, a practice meant to send offerings to deceased ancestors in the east. Guru Nanak stood in the river and began throwing water in the opposite direction, toward the west, toward his fields in Punjab. The crowd was outraged. How dare he? And he said, "If you can send water to the afterlife in the east, surely I can water my crops in Punjab from here." The absurdity of the ritual became visible. At Mecca, he slept with his feet pointed toward the Kaaba, considered deeply disrespectful. The Qazi, who rebuked him, heard his response, "Show me a direction where God is not, and I will turn my feet there." In the Himalayas, he met 84 Siddhas, accomplished yogis who had practiced silence and austerity for decades. And he sat with them in dialogue, challenging their withdrawal from society, their belief that isolation from the world was the path to God. He told them, "You have retreated from the world, but God is in the world. God is in the marketplace, in the field, in the family. You cannot reach God by leaving behind what God has made." This conversation is preserved in the Guru Granth Sahib as the Siddh Gosht, the discourse with the Siddhas, and it is essentially an extended exploration of exactly what the First Pauri says. Silence alone does not bring silence. Accumulation alone does not quench hunger, and cleverness alone does not carry you to truth. When Guru Nanak finally settled in Kartarpur and became a farmer, picking up a plough with his own hands, he was demonstrating the answer: Hukam Rajaaee Chalnaa, walking in the will, not withdrawing into silence, not performing elaborate rituals, not accumulating, not philosophizing, just living, honestly, simply, wholeheartedly, in alignment with what each moment asked for, working with his hands, eating from honest labor, sharing with all who came, sitting in Sangat with people of every background. The wall of inauthenticity of performance and pretense shattered, not by trying to shatter it, but by simply living in truth. This is the first Pauri lived out. The complete Pauri as a map. Let us step back and see the first Pauri as a single, perfectly constructed whole. Guru Nanak begins with 4 attempts, 4 sincere, widely practiced spiritual paths, and shows the limit of each one taken in isolation. Line 1. Soche soch na hoeeai. Ritual purification and intellectual contemplation, repeated endlessly, do not purify the inner self. The gap between body and soul cannot be bridged by cleaning the body alone. The gap between knowledge and being cannot be bridged by thinking alone. Line 2. Chuppe chup na hoeeai. Outer silence and prolonged meditation, however loving and devoted, do not produce inner silence. The ego self sitting in meditation is still the ego self. The spiritual hunger remains. Line 3. Bhukhya bhukh na utri. The hunger of the soul is not quenched by material accumulation, however vast. The spiritual emptiness is not a material problem and cannot have a material solution. Line 4. Sahas syanpa lakh hoeeai. Worldly cleverness, religious scholarship, intellectual accomplishment, hundreds of thousands of clever strategies, not one accompanies you at the crossing into death. Only what is genuinely within matters. Then 2 lines of questions and answer. Kiv Sachiaaraa Hoeeai. The great question: how does one become genuinely truthful? How does the wall of inauthenticity, the gap between what we truly are and how we actually live, shatter? Line 6. Hukam Rajaaee Chalnaa, Nanak Likhiya Naal. The answer? By walking in willing alignment with the divine order, which is already written within every soul. Notice the movement. The body begins with outer efforts, bathing, thinking, meditation, accumulation, cleverness, and it ends with an inward turn to what is already written within. The path is not outward into more techniques and strategies. The path is inward to the hukam that is already there. And notice also what the body does not say. It does not say, stop bathing, stop meditating, stop learning, stop working for what you need. These are not wrong. They are simply not sufficient as primary paths to becoming Sachiaaraa. But when animated by the hukam, when done from a place of inner alignment rather than ego striving, they become genuine. The bath becomes an act of gratitude. The silence becomes real stillness. The work becomes seva. The knowledge becomes wisdom. Everything changes when the hukam is the ground from which one acts. Dear listeners, let's close by reading the First Pauri one final time. But now, having walked through every word, every layer, every historical reference, let each line land differently. Soche soch na hoeeai, je sochi lakhwar. By purifying and thinking, and purifying and thinking, however many 100,000 times, the soul is not cleaned. The gap is not here on the surface. It is deeper. Chuppe chupp na hoeeai, je lai raha livtar. By sitting in silence, however loving, however devoted, however long, inner silence does not arrive. The noise the ego makes cannot be silenced by the ego itself. Bhukiya bhukh na utri, je baniya par. The hunger of the hungry is not quenched, not by all the wealth of all the worlds. The hunger you feel is not for more. It is for the one from whom you came. Sasi siyaan palak hoi, the ik na challe naali. Hundreds of thousands of clever strategies, not one walks with you at the final crossing. What walks with you is only what is genuinely within. Kiv Sachiaaraa Hoeeai, Kiv Kude Tutte Pali. So how does one become genuinely truthful? How does the wall between what we truly are and how we actually live, that wall, how does it break? Hukam Rajaaee Chalnaa, Nanak Likhiya Naali. Nanak says, by walking in willing, joyful alignment with the will of the One, the will that is not outside you, the will that is not in a book or a temple or a river, the will that was written into your soul before you were born, and that has been there waiting ever since. Dear listeners, the First Pauri does not ask you to perform. It asks you to be genuine. It does not ask you to add more layers, more rituals, more silence, more accumulation, more cleverness. It simply asks you to uncover what is already there. The hukam is written within you. The capacity to become Sachiaaraa, genuinely truthful, authentically yourself, is not something you need to earn or manufacture. It is already inscribed in your soul, placed there before you enter this world. What you need is not another technique. What you need is a willingness to walk step by step, day by day, choice by choice, in alignment with what is already most true within you. That is Hukam Rajaaee Chalnaa. That is the answer. And everything in Japji Sahib, all 38 Pauris that follow, all 1430 pages of the Guru Granth Sahib, is the elaboration, the deepening, the lived experience of that one answer. We close, as we always do, with the words of Guru Nanak himself that open the entire Japji Sahib. Aad sach, jugad sach, hai bhi sach, Nanak hosi bhi sach. True in the beginning, true throughout all ages, true here and now, and forever and ever. True. Jai Guruji.